Hey guys, welcome back to That Florida Feeling. Has everybody had a good week? I hope so. Did you have a good Valentine's Day? It's pretty rainy here today, but it's Florida. Wait 5 minutes, weather will change. It'll get more humid. It's all good. I'm sure by now you've all have heard the interesting Florida news that Tom Brady could be retiring. Of course, nothing's official till it's official, so I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens. As an Eagles fan, I'm okay with him retiring, personally. Do you guys like the episode about theme parks? I thought it was a fun one. I was really glad that you guys get to finally see the other side of the coin on that one. That you can understand that working in a theme park is not all fun and games and happiness and magic and sprinkles and sunshine and whatever else you want to say it is. That we were people too. And so thank you for listening to that episode. Thank you for listening to my best friend Tiffany. I'm glad she got to be on there and that you get to understand how it really feels to work there. Did you guys also like the Lake Okeechobee one? I actually got some really good comments about that. Thank you for those, for everybody who reached out about that one. It is a really cool place to visit and to go, and so it was fun to talk about. Thanks to everybody who has liked, subscribed, and followed on the Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I've actually gotten a lot of traffic on that, so I appreciate it. I just lost my wording right there. I don't know. Traffic, likes, whatever. You guys get what I'm trying to say. Thank you for that. If you have a second, I really would appreciate a review from either Spotify or Apple. That would be appreciated. And today I want to talk about something that just screams Florida. And you're probably all thinking the beach. No, well, kind of the beach. I am talking about Daytona, because when you think of Daytona, you just think of Florida. And I find Daytona to be a really interesting, fascinating, fun, kind of interesting place that has things like the beach, the Daytona 500, Bike Week, and many other interesting things that you can find. So it's kind of that city for everybody if you go at the right times. So Daytona is a city on the east coast of Florida that's in Volusia County. It's about 51 miles northeast of Orlando, or one end of I-4. 86 miles south of Jacksonville, which can seem like 4 hours if I-95 is not cooperating. And about 260 miles north of Miami. The city actually sits directly off I-95, and it's the main city in the Daytona Beach, and Ormond Beach metropolis area. And it's also called the Fun Coast of Florida. I did not know that until I was doing this podcast, and I'm not going to lie, I laughed at that. Because every part of Florida has like a different coast, and I just thought that Fun Coast for Daytona fits it rather well. And Daytona's been around actually quite a while. Of course, it wasn't known as Daytona first. The area that Daytona Beach actually sits in was once inhabited by a Timucuan village. And they lived in fortified villages that were there until they came in contact with the Europeans, which nearly exterminated them. And then through war, enslavement, disease, and other acts, they were finally extinct. And that happened through assimilation and attrition in the 18th century, which basically means that they just kind of joined the other people in Florida, and they stopped being their own Indian race. I don't know, I don't know how I would say that. I don't feel I said that right, but you guys get what I mean. Tribe. Stop being their own tribe. That's it. I figured out the word, you guys. Again, bear with me. English is hard, you guys. So after they moved out or assimilated, the Seminoles actually began to move in the area, and they were there until the Second Seminole War. And then times changed, and Spanish ruled, and then the English ruled, and actually from 1763 to 1783, that's when the British ruled Florida. And we've talked about this in other podcasts. And the King's Road actually passed through present-day Daytona. And the road came from St. Augustine, and it went all the way down to Andrew Turnbull's experimental colony of New Smyrna. And New Smyrna is something I'm going to talk about in another podcast, but I just have to say that was a shit show. All right, back to Daytona. The area of present-day Daytona comes from a land grant that was given to Samuel Williams in 1804 from the Spanish crown after Spain regained Florida from the British, all thanks to the American Revolutionary War. And the land grant included what would be present-day Daytona Beach, and Williams made great use of the land. He had a large plantation that grew cotton, citrus, rice, and sugarcane. And of course, that area now is known as the Daytona Beach Historical District, and it was once the Orange Grove Plantation. That's what Williams called it, and that's where he grew his citrus and sugarcane mainly. The plantation itself is actually on the west bank of the Halifax River, and it lasted until the Second World War when it was abandoned by the family. Williams had given it to his son. He was running it. The Second Seminole War happened, and it was basically burned to the ground by the Seminoles. I kind of say good for them. So, the former plantation was then eventually sold to Mathis Day Jr. in 1871, and he actually purchased the plantation, which was about 3,200 acres, with the intention of building a hotel. He wanted to build a hotel in a little fun area for people to come and visit, which was really a thing, especially when Flagler got a hold of St. Augustine and people started to move south. And the hotel became a focal point for the town that grew around it. So basically, they built a hotel and then the town grew. And the town was eventually named Daytona to honor Mathis Day Jr. And the town was officially incorporated in 1876. Now, the town continued to grow and expand thanks to the St. Johns and Halifax River Railway in 1886. And of course, that line would eventually be purchased by Henry Flagler himself, and the railway became part of the Florida East Coast Railway, which went all the way down. And of course, this railroad brought about changes, and really good changes to that area, because the railroad meant that the towns of Daytona, Daytona Beach, Kingston, and Seabreeze all merged into Daytona Beach. And even by the 1920s, it was dubbed the world's most famous beach. And I kind of agree with that, because I'm pretty sure that everybody in the U.S. has heard of Daytona Beach for one reason or another. And of course, Daytona is really known for racing and bikes, and there's a reason for that. And that's because Daytona had something that only a few beaches had at that time. Due to the compacted smooth sand, it meant that you could actually drive a car onto the beach. And that meant that you could even race on the beach. In 1902, that was the first year that automobiles and motorcycles actually began to race on the sand. And it even meant that companies would bring their new test products to the beach and race them. And of course, this brought a lot of new people, tourists, companies, business. It kind of really helped Daytona grow and even put it on the map. And the beach even hosted land speed record attempts. And in 1904, William K. Vanderbilt set an unofficial record of 92 miles per hour, which of course was a lot back then. And most of you are thinking, well, my car does 100. Watch me fly down I-4. I may or may not be one of those people too, just saying. But back to Daytona. Land speed racers would actually visit Daytona frequently and make the 23-mile beach course famous in just a really short amount of time. And that's kind of when you think of racing, you think of Daytona. And that really does go back to the early 1900s. Now, of course, with the record attempts, that includes some fatal attempts. But this didn't stop people, and it would really continue up until March of 1935, when Malcolm Campbell hit a record of 276 miles per hour. And unfortunately, with that, it also marked the end of Daytona's land speed racing days. Things were changing. And, that was a really good attempt. That was really cool. But that kind of really meant that they needed to change things, whether it was because of the course or because of erosion or because times are just changing and they could make money off this. That was really the last person to do a land speed record. Fun fact, you can actually still drive on most of the beaches in the area with a max speed of 10 miles per hour. And that's not just Daytona, that's actually part of the east coast of Florida. I know you can drive on Volano Beach outside of St. Augustine, because it's all really compacted sand. Just make sure you have a four-wheel drive car. Don't take a front-wheel drive car and get it stuck in the sand. It's not as fun as it sounds. So the early racing days helped set up an event that still happens to this day, the Daytona 500. Now, March of 1936 marked the first stock car race that was actually held on the Daytona Beach road course. And it's actually located on present-day Ponce Inlet, so not exactly in Daytona Beach, but close to it. Now, the race actually continued up until 1958 when William France Sr. and NASCAR created the Daytona International Speedway to replace the beach course. In fact, this Daytona International Speedway is still the one in use today. And this really started the Daytona 500. And the Daytona 500 is a 500-mile-long race, and one of two that are held in Daytona every year, the other one being the Coke Zero 400. Now, the inaugural Daytona 500 was held in 1959, And it was one of the many races in the series, but as of 1982, it became the season opening race of the Cup Series. And Daytona 500 is the most important and prestigious race on the NASCAR calendar. It also carries the largest purse. But it's also synonymous, I messed that word up. Synonymous, got it that time, with NASCAR. You hear Daytona 500, you automatically think of NASCAR. If you're me, you automatically think of Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Dale Earnhardt. I know that I'm not the only one because my husband's over here nodding at me like, yep, you're right. So, the Daytona 500 is a unique event in sports because it's the first race of the year. And most of the time in other sports, championships happen near the end of the season instead of the beginning, but not NASCAR. We just get it out of the way. And the race is also a big draw for racers, sponsors, and fans. In fact, it's one of the biggest events in Daytona. The Daytona 500 actually has the highest U.S. TV ratings more than any other race, and that actually includes the Indy 500, which was known to be a huge draw. But NASCAR has surpassed that. And the race also serves as the final event for Speed Weeks, which is a really cool event that happens in Daytona leading up to the Daytona 500. And the Daytona 500 is known as the Great American Race, or the Super Bowl of stock car racing. Now, the race is usually held mid to late February and is usually associated with President's Day week. Fun fact, though, on 8 occasions, the race has happened on Valentine's Day. What a way to celebrate with your sweetheart. Watching people wreck in NASCAR. Sorry, y'all. Growing up in the South, I have so much I can say about this. So the winner of the race is presented with the Harley J. Earl Trophy in Victory Lane, and then the winning car is actually displayed in race-winning condition for the year at the Daytona 500 Experience, which is a museum and gallery dedicated to the race and the sport, and it actually sits adjacent to the Daytona International Speedway. So basically that means if that person does end-over-end flips through the finish line, that's how the car is going to look for the next year. I find that really interesting. And the race is important to the sport and to Daytona since 1959 because it's really helped NASCAR to grow and the town to grow and cement itself. The event is full of fun, sportsmanship, and it really lets people see the beauty of Daytona. Sorry, guys, my cats are fighting, and I have no idea what one of them is doing. Will you stop? Sorry. So, here's a few fun facts about the Daytona 500. The first winner of the Daytona 500 was actually Lee Petty. If that name sounds familiar, he is associated with Richard Petty. Richard Petty, in fact, was the first two-time winner in 1964 and 1966. He was then again the first third-time winner in 1971, the first fourth-time winner in 1973, and actually holds the most wins of the Daytona 500 with 7 wins total. The fastest Daytona 500 was in 1980 and was won by Buddy Baker. Apparently, my husband knows who that is. I don't know. In 1988, restrictor plates were mandated to reduce dangerously high speeds, but this is also the race where Richard Petty rolled his car 8 times and took 4 other drivers out with him. In 1989, when Darrell Waltrip pushed his fuel tank to 53 laps and finally won the Daytona 500 after his 17th try. In 1988 was when Dale Earnhardt won after trying for 20 years. Probably a well-deserved win. 2001, though, was known as Black Sunday, and that's when Dale Earnhardt died in a crash on the final lap. I remember that day vividly. I was not watching the race, but I definitely remember that day, because all you hear is, Dale Earnhardt's dead, and you're like, no, he's not. Unfortunately, that is the day he died doing what he loved. In 2008, it was the 50th running of the Daytona 500, and it was the first time it was under the Sprint Cup Series. Side note, I remember when they were the Winstons and all the cigarettes used to be the main sponsor of NASCAR before it became cell phones and Sprint and Coke and things like that. Yeah.
It was Winston and Bush.
Yeah, it was. It was. Oh, yeah, it was. Sorry, that Matthew agreed. It was cigarettes and beer. I forgot it was the Bush Cup Series. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now it's all cell phones and Cokes and chocolate.
Bush League. Came from.
Okay, there you go. Maybe I should have had you do this podcast. So 2008 was, okay, we said that one already. Sorry. So it's a Sprint Cup now instead of the Winston Cup and the Busch Cup and all the fun times when nobody cared if you drank or smoked. So 2013, though, was an interesting race, and that's when Danica Patrick became the first woman to ever race in the Daytona 500. Fun fact, the Daytona 500 is happening on February 20th, which is this Sunday. Yes, Matthew, they also did have a lot of Dip and Chew as a sponsor. Yes. Side note, there is a really funny episode of South Park.
Dumb and stupid.
Yeah, that has NASCAR on it. You should probably, if you're a South Park fan, check that one out.
Stupid.
Yeah, Cartman loves NASCAR, apparently. Actually, Kenny loved NASCAR, but anyways.
But no, not everybody's dumb and stupid that likes NASCAR.
Again, South Park reference. Watch it, you'll understand. And you're not wrong. The next thing that Daytona is well known for is Bike Week. And again, that's another one that's really synonymous with Daytona. Said it right that time. Woohoo! And that happens yearly. That event is a motorcycle event and rally held in Daytona Beach, Florida. And the event runs for 10 days. And it includes motorcycle racings, concerts, parties, street festivals, and pretty much anything and everything you can imagine. The event is held the first week of March. So this year it's going to be March 4th through the 13th. That's coming up as well. Now, the Daytona Beach Bike Week Rally actually started as the Daytona 200 race, so it's another race, on January 24th of 1937. And the first race was 3.2 miles on a beach and pavement course. And the first winner was Ed Kretz on an Indian motorcycle with an average speed of 73 miles an hour. And then this became a yearly race. And of course, they had to take a break from 1942 to 1947 thanks to World War II. But during the years that it wasn't happening, an unofficial event happened. And that is where we get Bike Week. People would still come and have rallies and hang out and enjoy motorcycles. And that is where we get Bike Week from. But the event came back in 1947 and gained even more popularity. In fact, the event was so big, it was even promoted by the co-founder of NASCAR, Big Bill France. And Bike Week is actually still promoted at the Daytona International Speedway. The bike races happen there every year. Unfortunately, that ended in 2021, and now they're at the Volusia Speedway Park, which doesn't seem as fun. Now, the event is a huge draw for bike riders, enthusiasts, tourists, sponsors, and anybody alike. Bikers even take trips when they're in town for that week. I know that they like to visit St. Augustine. I have seen that with my own eyes. St. Augustine even parks, was it bike park? Yeah, it was bike parking in the middle of the cathedral. And then, of course, they go to Orlando and South and all the other fun places. The event also marred by death and mostly due to rider accidents, with the most being in 2026 at 20 when the event was happening. So, just be responsible. Now, the Daytona Beach Convention also hosts a Biketoberfest in October to bring bikers back into the city. And the event is usually scheduled for the weekend after Columbus Day and can last the entire week depending on how long people decide to stay in town. So it could be a week, it could be a weekend. It just really depends on how people come and show up. And the event is known mainly for a 12-mile long ride along a scenic route that's known as the Ormond Scenic Loop and Trail. And if you've ever been in that area, it really is beautiful. And the Daytona International Speedway also sponsors motorcycle races that are at the same time as Biketoberfest. So it really gives people more than one reason to come and enjoy the town again. Of course, Daytona is known for another thing. And if you haven't thought of it yet, it's definitely the spring break destination. In fact, there is a Dayton to Daytona annual event that draws over 3,000 University of Dayton college students to Daytona. And that has actually been going on since 1977. Of course, Daytona is an ideal place because it's right off 95 and it's right inside Florida. And it really does have some beautiful beaches, some great resorts, and of course, good places to eat and drink. The area is known for 23 miles of beaches that are open 24/7, so you can camp on them if you like. The city also has 10 waterfront parks for people to enjoy the natural views in the area, as well as some great trails and other places to explore. And of course, thanks to the rise of other places for spring break, it has taken people away from Daytona, but people still go and enjoy it nonetheless. And still a hugely popular destination for spring break and summer vacations. Daytona is also known for golfing. Daytona Beach is actually the home of the LPGA International. The LPGA International is a golf club that is, again, used by the LPGA, which is Lady Pro Golfers Association. And it has 2 different courses, and it's the headquarters of the LPGA itself, and so they host tournaments at this club yearly. Daytona, though, has something for everyone if you're not such a sports fan or a spring breaker. It still has beaches and museums. The Museum of Arts and Sciences is the main museum in Volusia County, and the Southeastern Museum of Photography and the Halifax Historical Museum are also near Daytona Beach, so they're fun for day trips. The Museum of Arts and Sciences is actually a collection of museums and galleries that feature arts, photographies, and an exhibit that includes one of the largest Coca-Cola collections in the world. So if you're a Coke fan, you should definitely check that out. The museum also features the largest collection of Florida art in the world. Of course, Daytona also has the Daytona Beach Symphony Society, which has performances by the U.S. and international orchestras, operas, and dance competitions at the Peabody Auditorium. Of course, Daytona has had a few close calls with nature. Hurricanes are definitely a thing that happens in Florida, kind of yearly. And hurricanes, aren't the only bad thing that really happens. Florida does have other issues, but fortunately for Daytona, usually when a hurricane comes by, it just passes offshore with winds and rains affecting the area. Actually, if a hurricane's far enough offshore, you have a nice windy day and it cools down the summers, and you actually end up having a really nice summer day. The hurricane risk, though, is actually lower for Daytona Beach than such as Miami or the Keys. Although 2004 was an active year for hurricanes in the Daytona Beach area. Daytona has only had one direct hit, and that was Hurricane Donna in 1960s. Hurricane Donna actually brought strong winds and storm surges to the area. The hurricane actually destroyed 10 homes, severely damaged over 100, caused minor damage over to 1,000, brought 1 fatality to the area, and caused lots and lots of damage to the I cannot speak right now. Let me try that again. Lots of damage to the natural habitat of the area. Words, y'all. Daytona has minimal risk of tornadoes, but minimal still means possible. There was actually a really bad tornado that hit in February of 1998, and it killed 3 people and it injured 70, and it caused millions in damages. But that is not the weirdest thing to happen to Daytona. The weirdest event was actually a natural event that was a rogue wave. And this happened back in 1992, so what are we at, 30 years now? 30 years ago. A 28-mile long rogue hit Volusia County, which basically means it went from Ormond Beach to New Smyrna Beach. The crest was 9 feet high, and it centered in Daytona Beach. So the waves basically caused all the boats to crash ashore into the cars, ruining cars, couple buildings. People suffered injuries from the debris, and 75 people total were injured. So talk about a weird phenomenon that would only happen in Florida. Now, Daytona is a beautiful area of Florida that is known for some sports, vacations, and fun. I want to mention 2 random events that happened in Daytona. First is that you can see really cool spaceship launches. It's not far from Cape Canaveral, so you can actually see the spaceship launch from Daytona Beach. We actually got to see one a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. We didn't get to see it, like, when I showed you guys the other one when we were on Cocoa. It wasn't that clear, but you could still see it.
It was already in the air.
Yeah, it was up in the air, and it was really cool. You could still see the trails and everything. And then the second event, I'm going to let Matthew tell you about.
That dirty son of a bitch Hulk Hogan turned his back on WCW and joined the NWO, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. What a dirty son of a bitch.
What year?
The Ocean Center, Daytona Beach, Florida, 1996. July 1996, Bash the Beach. He was the 3rd man.
And there you have it, guys. If you're a wrestling fan, there you have it. Daytona is just full of fun and surprises. And rednecks. And tourists.
Hillbillies.
And bikes. And who knows what else.
It's Florida. There's still hillbillies.
Yeah, well, that is true. There is. But you know what else is in Daytona? Florida man.
Absolutely.
In fact, I feel there's a lot of Florida
Kevin
men.
Sullivan and Hulk Hogan and...
Well, he does look...
Jimmy Hart used to have his...
Oh, yeah, Jimmy Hart had a bar. Yeah, his resort bar.
Yes.
Tell him about
Tiki
it.
bar.
Yeah, the
beer in cans, baby.
Right.
Because you can't have glass on the beach.
Right, so you can take a...
ODB had her food truck there, too. Hey.
Daytona's
you
full
can
of
laugh. Y'all can laugh all you want.
It's only funnier because we sound redneck.
I'm hillbilly as hell, but like...
Daytona is a really fun place. I'll be honest. Like, you got to pick the week to go.
Call the movers.
Well, yeah, all right, if you want to. But Daytona is a really fun and interesting place to go, but you just got to pick the right week if NASCAR and bikes aren't for you. But again, guys, watch out for Florida Man. And I'm actually going to tell you about a Florida man that comes from Daytona. The video actually came out last year during Bike Week, so you might have seen it. And it was a man on a motorcycle jumping a drawbridge as it opened. Yes, he made it. No, he was not being smart. Please don't do this. There's a reason that arms come down over drawbridges and train tracks. And they're there for your safety, guys. This is not a smart idea. So please don't do it. And please watch out for Florida Man. And if you see Florida Man doing something, do the opposite. It's usually the smart thing. So I hope you've learned something new and fun about another part of Florida, some interesting facts, a new place to visit, or just some sports history. Thank you for listening. As always, please review on Spotify and Apple. I appreciate it, guys. I've also put out questions on Spotify on previous episodes, so check those out. Tell me how you feel. Reach out to me, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, email. I'm glad to hear from you guys. I always do the questions on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you for participating. I'm really glad that none of us care about spring cleaning. None of us. Literally none of us. So, glad to know we're all the same. I love interacting with you guys. Thank you so much. Don't forget to tag That Florida Feeling in your Instagram pictures. I got to see some really cool ones from Nancy this week, so I was able to feature her and Florida on foot. And thank you for listening, guys. Stay warm. I know it's still snowing in parts of the U.S. Wear your sunscreen if you're in a part that's not snowing. Don't be Florida Man, guys. And as always, that's your daily dose of sunshine.